I don't know if this is actual part of security, but if anyone follows me on Facebook, I think on our last trip, or that in January, Norm actually carried a glass of wine all the way through security
Oh, I didn't even catch
in
that.
Lisbon.
I am going to have to check that out.
It was one of those things that, because you go one at a time through the
Yeah.
customs thing before we were leaving. We were going from Lisbon, going through security, through their customs on that side before we boarded and go to our gate.
Mm-hmm.
And we just came out of the lounge. So I happened to turn around, and he still has his glass of red wine in his hand after he goes through security. I went, that is a feat that I've never seen
Nicely
before.
done, Norm. Nicely done.
Yeah, so we did I said, stop here. This needs a photo.
In the middle of security, as they're like going, there's no cell phones allowed, right? Like,
Oh, and this was
obviously
past,
they really
and
don't
obviously
care.
they didn't care. Anyway, so maybe it's just a Lisbon thing. All hail Portugal. Welcome to episode 42 of Flying for Flavor. I'm your host, Stephanie PreCheck. This is the first of a new episode format for the summer season, just to allow a little bit more flexibility for our guest schedules as well as for your flavor crew. I want to make sure everyone can have some time off and relax and still be able to provide you with a fresh and informative episode every single Saturday morning. So we're focusing more on pre-taping certain segments and interviews as time and schedules allow, so that we can upload episodes when they are complete and ready, or if there's a timely subject that we really want to bring forward at a particular time. So we won't be promoting episodes and topics too far in advance for this coming season anyhow, so that we can move episodes around the schedule as needed. However, if you keep an eye on our Facebook page, we will continue to make little notes about what's coming up maybe a day or two in advance on the Saturday, as well as for industry updates. However, if you're subscribing, you'll just automatically get the episodes uploaded to your device when and wherever that you need them. But if there's a particular topic that you heard us reference in one of the episodes, just sort of stay tuned and follow us along on the Facebook page, and we will update you as we have our schedule confirmed. So because it's just me in the studio today doing some of these intros and editing, I still want to offer a wine recommendation, especially for this week. I just finished coming back from Halifax and spent another lovely couple days in Wolfville, which is northwest of Halifax. And that's where you can get a good chunk of the wineries from Nova Scotia all in one area. So it's a great place just to get yourself accustomed to the style of wines that are produced in the area, meet a few of the locals, kind of get a feel of what that area is all about. So I was there, and I actually came back, not only brought things back in my suitcase, but I actually ended up ordering some stuff to ship directly to my home here in Ontario. So I wasn't even always aware of a lot of the shipping policies. So I did all of you wine shoppers a favor, especially if you're traveling at all this summer, is that I actually started creating a blog post on the website, stephaniepiche.ca. If you look at the latest blog post, you'll see the one for Nova Scotia, basically about packing and shipping, whether sometimes it's better just to put things in your suitcase to take home. Other times it's better just to try to ship it directly. So I actually gave you some shipping rates and everything for some, but not all of the producers in Nova Scotia. And as I have time over the summer or I'm traveling to other provinces, I will update that and add additional province tables for you, so that you can always kind of have an idea and a game plan when you're traveling about what you should make room in your suitcase for and what things that you can actually prep to order and ship home ahead of you or behind you, either way. So, but this weekend, I'm actually heading to a Beamsville Bench. It's their annual Graze the Bench event. I'm going to be there on the Sunday for the day, sipping and listening to tunes, visiting a bunch of winemakers. So I thought in the show notes to this week, I'm going to give you the links for this year's participants, which are Angels Gate, Fielding Estate, Hidden Bench, Organized Crime, Peninsula Ridge, Rosewood Estates, and 30 Bench winemakers. So when they refer to the bench, in this case, they're referring to the Beamsville Bench area. Beamsville, of course, is just west of St. Catharines, which is probably about a half an hour from Niagara on the Lake. So it's a little bit west in that area. There's a lot of other wineries to visit in this area, but for this one particular event. Basically, it's 5 hours with a shuttle taking us around, and we get to hear live music, and each winery has been matched up with its own caterer for small plates, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be uploading a lot of stuff on Facebook and Instagram if you want to follow along. Those will all be under my own personal accounts, Stephanie PreCheck. So for this episode, we wanted to talk about hotel and travel airport security specifically. I just came off flights to and from Halifax. I'm going to be heading up to Spain, of course, in a few weeks on a different airline. So I'm quite familiar with that, but I really wanted to get some ideas and have a good conversation with our own in-house travel expert, Stacy Fauner, about overall security when traveling. And there's a lot to mention this episode. What started off as a quick conversation turned into a long one. So be prepared, it's a longer episode, but there's a lot of great tips to share in this one. So here's Stacy and I. Okay, so a couple other things, and then I'll ask you some questions because you're going to be my expert and tell me if I'm doing things wrong. But one of the things on my luggage that we've learned over the years is that someone told us a horror story. We don't know if it was a rumor or we heard it from a tip from somebody, to not always put your house address on your baggage. You know, your bag tags where they have partly because if you ever do misplace your baggage, you don't know who's going to get it. And depending on what you have in there, if there's jewelry or anything else that's valuable, somebody may get the idea that, oh, hey, my cousin lives in there. I'm going to go get them to scope out the house. Mm-hmm. So we use our office address on ours. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people so I usually say, if you don't have an office, maybe just find another kind of address. Could be your ask a friend if you can use their office address. It's just a place that if they need to return a bag or something like that comes in, that there's another address that is not your home and not your friend's house either, because that would be wrong.
That'd be funny.
That would be.
What is this? These gifts are coming. I like them. I like it. I'm opening this up. I don't care.
They don't need to know it came in. But this way you can always, you can feel secure in knowing that your bags are going to be returned to a business address. You don't have to worry about security for your home or anything like that. Or your friend's home.
And just a quick one on that. I was just thinking back of all the trips I've taken. I don't even know if I put a physical address down. I put my name, my email address, and my cell phone number. Reason being is that usually what happens is they ask you to pick it up at the airport. Depending. I've had luggage lost when I was in the States, and they basically said return to the Boston airport to pick up your luggage.
When
They'll
I'm
call
traveling,
you.
But here in
Yes.
Sudbury,
Yes.
I've had Air Canada deliver luggage to our house.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, actually our office.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those things that if they have shuttles, they'll put them on a taxi or whatever else too. So, I mean, someplace in these smaller airports, it'll be faster for them to bring it to your home when there's no...
I'm just going to use your office address then,
That's
Stephanie.
okay. That's fine.
We're all just going to use it.
So a couple other things. I try to, as much as it's tempting to bring everything you own in a number of suitcases and pay the extra, you never know, especially if you're traveling to a place that you're not used to in an airport, have so many bags that you can't keep track of them. So yes, you can put them on a luggage cart, but what if there is no luggage cart? Right?
Yes.
Then you're doing like a rolly bag and another bag and then a backpack, and then the old Jeff Foxworthy stand-up routine talking about how his relatives used to show up with Piggly Wiggly bags, right? It's surprising. I see people in the airport, they're almost like white kitchen catchers. Like they will put anything in a bag to carry it on a plane. And you can't take care of all of those and keep an eye on all of those. And those kind of situations are what pickpockets or ne'er-do-wells, as my mother would say, would be looking for.
As targets.
They're easy targets, because you're flustered, you have too many things to keep track of. You know, you can't, just like if you had your purse laying all over the place, just think if you had 5 purses that you had to keep track of.
Absolutely.
So try to keep everything kind of contained, as opposed to doing 2 smaller bags, do 1 large bag. Mm-hmm. So even when I'm on my next trip, we've already kind of discussing how we're trying to pare down our packing. But just to be safe, I'm going to use a larger suitcase. May not fill it all the way. Planning to fill it with wine, obviously, on the way home. But just that and my purse. So I have one large suitcase on wheels, my purse. That should do me for 2 weeks.
Perfect.
And I may have a folding duffel that I can kind of throw in as a last minute for soft items to bring on as an extra carry-on or whatever on the plane. But that's basically it. But it's easier for me when I'm going into places I'm not used to.
Right.
For me to have one bag to keep track of, because easily to get distracted when you're in another country.
Right. Absolutely. And it's smart because if you're not just staying in one location, you have to move those bags, not just the one, but all of them that you've brought from location to location to location, not just in the airport. You become more of a target when you're walking down the street to find a cab, and then
you think people don't notice you dragging that big
17.
suitcase down cobblestone laneway?
Yeah, exactly.
Which because usually because we've gone to some really big cities where they don't have parking on site, and their parking is 2 blocks away.
Right.
So you're like wheeling these bags all the way down.
I'm thinking Venice especially, right? Like they just drop you off, and it's like, have fun. You're down the street to the thing. Even in Greece, in certain spots, they just say, here, this is where we can stop because there's vehicles not allowed anywhere else. And then you just have to make your way down these streets, not even knowing where you're going. Suitcases in tow.
So some hotels may say off-site parking.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you ask what that means.
Exactly. So the only other thing is I want to get your opinion on, and it's that damn shrink wrapping. There are machines. People are paying huge money. I don't know if it's a particular country or culture. Who's teaching people they need to shrink wrap their bags?
I don't know. I just saw that in Toronto, actually, coming back from Ottawa. And I've seen it in all airports. And I actually thought about that. And it's funny you brought it up because I wonder who they're trying to keep out. Are they trying to keep out, like, the baggage handlers or the security people? Because
you think they don't have an X-Acto knife?
Yeah, no, like let's get this straight. First of all, shrink wrapping is not going to stop the security people through looking through your bags. They will rip it open. They'll break locks if they have to, and they tell you that you're better off not even locking your bag these days.
I don't lock it.
It's
I don't
pointless.
even bother.
Someone wants in, they're going to get in.
Yes, exactly. You don't even know who's going to want in, but it's a matter of I do make sure to keep my zippers are always at the top as opposed to on the sides or anything else. It's easier for me to visually see if they've been open or not.
Yes.
There's all kinds of people who have done funny things like put certain things and tie it on the outside so they know if someone's been. Everyone's very suspicious, right?
Absolutely. I wonder though if it keeps it dry. Because I've had a lot of issues in it lately where your suitcase, because mine's not like a plastic, mine's more of a material. It comes out and it's a little damp because of the condensation in the storage where they keep the luggage.
That would make sense aside from the fact I've seen a lot of hard cases getting shrink wrapped too.
That makes sense. Okay then. Definitely not that.
No. So anyways, if you happen to be listening and
you do that.
You know the magic of shrink wrapping luggage.
Please let us know because we want to know.
Because I just think it's kind of crazy. But anyways, speaking of going into your bags, one of the things you have to notice is that especially when you're going out of the country, certain countries have policies and procedures that they may do random bag checks. They may or may not have signs posted anywhere that they're going to do this. It could be before or after customs. Sometimes when you're waiting. Sometimes we've done that where we'll go into a certain country, maybe drugs are a big issue in that country, so they actually will delay the luggage going out onto the luggage on the carousel because they're having their dogs sniff through and inspect on the other side prior to them unloading any of the luggage. So there will be delays for certain things like that. And if you do make it difficult, yes, they'll block it. They may pull certain bags to go and open it and check it. There's been a couple of countries I've went to before where everyone had their bag checked. It's whole suitcases. So again, if you have 3 bags that you need to go through, it's a little bit awkward. And then it's just another thing for me. As a female, special note, anything you don't want people to see, please,
Put it in one of those little bags.
Put them in those little lingerie bags, wash me bags. You can get these cute little ones. I bought one travel cubes, but they'll still go through them to a certain extent. So if I have a wash me bag that has a little cartoon of a bra on the front, they'll kind of figure out that maybe those are just bras and they don't really need to go in there. But it also keeps it so the people standing in line with you during that inspection are not seeing everything that you own. Your dirty underwear. Like it's just, anyways, I'm always laughing at it saying, anyways, if you don't want it to be seen, regardless of what it is, just make sure that it is kind of zippered, that maybe the person seeing it, can see it at the bottom of your suitcase, but it's not laying right on top where everybody in the entire airport can view it.
Yes.
So don't blame them. I'm just warning you now.
Yes.
It happens whether you like it or not.
Yes.
So I'm not going to get too much into packing, obviously, for this episode, but you heard a couple little things about what to do with your luggage, how to keep things safe. It wasn't mentioned in this, but of course, I mentioned a little while ago about how I brought back wine in my suitcase. Also for security purposes, make sure that people can kind of see what's in things. I know you want to try to wrap things up to protect them, but don't forget that security may go into your suitcase. I did have my very first bottle explode in my suitcase this weekend, which I was not very pleased about, especially because it was a sparkling cider. But luckily, I had it protected inside one of those wineskin wraps. And because it was sealed, any of the broken glass stayed within the bubble wrap. So that was handy. I don't know whether it was the pressure of the sparkling or if it got damaged somehow during the baggage handling process or if somebody was in my suitcase. I have no idea. But luckily, no one obviously got hurt. But most of my clothing did smell like cider. So luckily, it wasn't red wine, which was great. So a couple of little updates on that shrink wrapping. I did some research on my own, but every website I came across just talked about how, yes, it can protect maybe an older suitcase that you're worried about, zippers breaking, things popping open. But it does seem to be such a waste, only for the fact that at any time, airport security, as well as airlines and or baggage handlers that have approval, can break through that plastic anyhow. So I wouldn't really advise spending the money on it unless you're in one of those situations where, you're on your way to a next destination and your zipper broke on your suitcase and you just want to wrap it just to make sure that everything stays put together until your next destination. But other than that, not really totally concerned about it. So again, it had to do with what to wear to go through the security things.
Yes.
So I go through, and ladies, this may sound really bizarre, but a lot of ladies' shoes, even flats, have metal in the soles. Mm-hmm. So as much as you think those little booties are really cute, and yes, there may be soft suede or whatever else, odds are there's some kind of metal in the construction of the shoe, let alone especially the heel. So regardless if it's a small heel or not. Exactly. So they do usually set off. Mm-hmm. So if you are icky about airport floors, please wear socks.
Yes.
Or at least pack them separately. I've learned that the hard way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've walked through with bare feet too many times to think about. Really, it grosses me out. And it just dawns on me. I hate to say it, even though I'm a seasoned traveler, you get there and you're like, you want my shoes off? Are you kidding me?
Yes.
And then you do it and you're like, I should have just even wore those socklets. You can easily throw them in. Mm-hmm. If you're wearing flip-flops, I don't know.
It's still a US only thing, I think, though. I never see the whole shoes thing anywhere else except for in the US.
Sudbury does it.
Regardless, even if they're going to Toronto?
Yeah. I've seen them. They've asked me to take my shoes off all the time.
They might be doing it because, again, your shoes they
look, yeah.
Or your shoes may look like they're going to set it off. Okay. And that's probably because I don't think, unless you're going to, or it's also, well, no. Because, again, you wouldn't have to go through security again when you get to Toronto if you're going.
Because I've seen whole lines of mittens. Not that I'm shouting out for Sudbury, but I think it's great because security is security. And I'm willing you do what you need to do for all of us because it makes me feel okay on a plane. Correct. Right. So, but it's funny because I find sometimes the security in Sudbury is amazing, like high tech compared to other countries that I've been to. Oh, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, usually I get a wave. Yeah. They're so happy to see tourists. They don't care.
You start getting, you travel a lot when the security guys are just looking through your bags. You're going, just don't look there. Just don't do it. You need to really know what that is. Open it up.
Yeah, you really don't want to open that.
No.
That's hilarious. And then I guess the other thing is we can maybe include, again, a standard checklist. I've always thought about it, and I made notes before about having a guide. Maybe we can kind of work on that absolutely attached for show notes of if you're a first-time traveler. Here are some suggestions of what to wear and how to prepare yourself before you go through a security line.
And it's funny, I get a lot of clients that ask those questions. They don't know what to pack, how to pack. They don't know how to navigate through an airport. And I know if you're the first time traveler, it's not something to be ashamed of or anything. Ask the questions that you need to ask because it's really important to know your layout because you don't want to look like that target, and you don't need, some people go overboard. You don't need to go overboard in terms of security and safety in an airport, but again, know how to do the navigation. And yeah, we should write something up.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll work on that. We'll have it in the show notes by the time this is done. So as promised, we've put together basically a little PDF of tips on what to wear to go to the airport to make your pass through security much faster, not just for you, but for your other passengers. How to pack your carry-on or your handbag, what to keep handy and where, not just for getting through security, but also for your own protection and safety, and to make sure things are at the ready, and to protect yourself from any pickpockets or anything else that may be scouting or out tourists at the airport. So make sure you check that out. I will have it both printed or ready to read and scroll through, as well as a PDF version that you can download and you can keep to your device at any time. So either when you're traveling or if you just want to keep it on your desktop at home, so you can have a quick refresher the next time you head out to the airport.
I remember when there was a time when you had to actually turn your computer on.
Yes.
During security.
Mhm.
And there were, I used to always say to people, even if you don't know, I mean, randomly they can still ask you to do that. Have your computer in sleep mode so that it doesn't take forever for it to log up, so they can see it actually working. Because all they need to know is that it's actually working.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I usually have mine in kind of sleep mode anyways. But of course, I'm one of those nerds that brings like laptop, iPad, my phone, all my chargers. Yeah. It's always with me in a carry-on. I would never suggest anyone keep any of that stuff.
No, never.
In your suitcase. It always should be with you either in your purse or carry-on or whatever you're taking with you on your plane. But I usually bring all those things with me, so this way I have no problem. And they don't actually mind it. Most of the time, they don't even ask. Laptops. Funny. Standard iPads, they don't necessarily, some places don't care, but because I had an attached keyboard, they considered that close enough to a laptop that they made me take it out. So I had one of those cases that has a keyboard on it. So just kind of be prepared for all of that kind of technology stuff. I have never yet been asked to provide any. Have you heard of anyone who's had going into the States and having someone check their phones, their iPads, or?
Oh no, I haven't.
There was all these warnings. Remember in the last year or so
that they can confiscate your phone to see if you have any kind of affiliation to
Democrats,
other people that you shouldn't. the people that you shouldn't be. I don't know. I'm like,
I know there was all these warnings online. Anyways,
disappointed.
it's never been. Yeah, it's like nothing happened. I mean, I even traveled to. I was there. I think we traveled to New York, going through Porter's. We landed in New Jersey, and I'm sure we were there I want to say one of the weekends. We usually end up going there with the UN's meeting. Never fails, right? I always have bad timing when you go into those things. But it was just after the travel ban was started, right? So everyone's panicking about all these warnings were online about going to the States. It was nothing. First of all, there's a lot of people that obviously got scared off that they just didn't go for a little while. But I think there was probably 20 of us in the entire airport going through security. But there was absolutely nothing. We've never had an extra delay ever since all these travel bans and things happened. We've never witnessed anything. So there might be odds and ends stories at certain airports here and there more than others. Maybe certain times of the day, certain times of the year. I just personally have never run into anything.
Right.
But maybe it's also because the two places I've kind of been flying into were New York and Los Angeles, which both are so massive that maybe it's too hard to see it. It's not like you're going to fall across, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think this is a good time to talk about the electronic devices. We touched on a little bit, but there seems to be a lot of questions that still arise about whether U.S. Customs has the right to be checking your device, whether you're driving across the border, going into the States, or whether you are taking a flight there or passing through the States. At any point, as long as you are going to be landing or connecting through the United States, you still have to deal with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. So here's some of the little notes on what electronic devices, how and when they can be searched. So agents are allowed to demand a passcode to open your phone, even if there's no probable cause, so they can just check. They're not allowed to start downloading old files from iCloud. The officers are supposed to be asking you to shut off your signal. This ensures that any files that you did have stored on your cloud don't automatically download onto your device, because that's not what they're supposed to be searching. So the best thing to do is make sure that your phone is on airplane mode. You really shouldn't be using your device going through the security section of the airport anyhow. So just make sure that it is connected, not connected anyway that way, at least for that time period. And this way they can still ask for your passcode and they'll open up the phone, just double check to make sure that it's actually an operating phone, that there's nothing, no direct text messages, anything there that they have to worry about. But yes, they do have the right to do so. If they can't access a device for some period, for whatever reason, they will detain it for a multi-day period. It has happened. I've heard about it. Not happened to me, of course. But anything beyond 5 days has to be approved by management and higher-ups. So it's something that doesn't happen very often unless you happen to be on those no-fly lists, of course. So travelers must be notified of the purpose for a search. You can be present during the search, though you can't ask to see the screen. Before crossing the border, make sure to delete any private material. Upload things to your iCloud or anywhere, maybe a Dropbox folder or something, so that you don't really have to worry about it. And then again, make sure you have your airplane mode on, because just because you're turning over your phone, you just have to be prepared. So it's one of those things that, yes, unfortunately, it's a bother and it's probably invading your privacy, but you really have to choose your battles, and this may not one that you want to bother with. So do you have Nexus?
I do. I do, and I'm so happy I do.
It was a nerve-wracking thing at first for me, I have to admit, because I decided I wanted to go through the process just so I can answer questions for other people. Mm-hmm. And Norm was just a little slow in getting his. So for the first 6 months of me having Nexus,
you had to stay in the line.
I stood with him.
Yes.
However, because I wanted to see how it worked, he told me once, and this was at Pearson in Toronto, for me to go into the trusted traveler lane where Nexus card works. And he goes, you go in this one and I'll go in the regular one, and we can kind of meet up in the center, and this way you can actually see if it's any better. Mm-hmm. He beat me out of there.
Really?
And one of the, and this is just my little pet peeve. There's a point of the trusted traveler that gets you through to the point where you're going through the security process when you're taking all your metal things and everything else off. But depending on the lineups, the airport staff who are directing you to lineups, they just want things to go faster. So the people in the regular lineup are getting sent to the Nexus line anyways on the other side.
Absolutely. I've seen that a lot.
So I ended up being delayed because the people they sent in front of me in that security line turned out to be first-time travelers.
Yes.
Who had not just baby formula and bottles in there, but every other little kids thing, and
extra change in your pocket.
Yeah, just like metal everywhere, and and all the extra things we joked around about, between the hat, the sunglasses, the belts, the extra jewelry, 4 gold chains
with the big buckles on them. I don't know.
Cowboy boots.
Yes,
steel toe.
Please, if you
boots.
have your boots, take them off. If you haven't learned that yet, please do.
But it was this whole family, right? So they just redirected them there, and I'm standing there going, okay, well, this isn't really getting me motivated to use my Nexus card. However, I have to say that now that we both have it and we're in a hurry, especially when we're going between Canada and US.
Absolutely.
I keep my passport now. It can be zipped away in my purse. I rarely have to show it, aside from the first check-in part.
Yes.
And then after that, I'm using my Nexus card with my boarding pass, and the Nexus card is the one that I'm actually keeping out with me.
Absolutely.
Which is a little easier, right?
And I mean, for people who don't know much about the Nexus, what they do is that they get your irises scanned, fingerprints on the US side, and on the Canadian side, it's, or is it the Canadian side, it's iris scan?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was. Like when I went, I essentially had a meeting at the US Border Control office. I spent longer time in the waiting room than I did for my actual appointment.
Absolutely.
The girls that work for customs that were on the other side, they're U.S. Border Patrol. They were so friendly and
Absolutely.
great mood and nothing scary like you think you're going to be.
Everybody thinks they're going to be like brought into a separate room and get strip shirts, but you're not. It's not like that at all.
It's not like TV.
It's not like TV. It's actually, they would love everyone to have a Nexus card if we could, because we're all documented then. So then if you do something, your fingerprints are on file, your irises are scanned. And there's also a side to it as well for safety precautions. If something does happen, let's say a tragic event happens, there's ways to identify you. I know that sounds horrific on a show, but I mean, again,
that's what
something happens.
We are talking about security, so it's okay.
Again, I mean, it's something that there is that extra. You are safer with having a Nexus card.
I think that makes sense. And, and they even go down to employment and all kinds of other stuff, right? So there's a lot of information that's not necessarily associated in detail with your passport registration that they'll have in the Nexus card.
Exactly.
So, and it does, aside from that first time where Norm beat me through security, for the most part, we do sail right through.
Absolutely.
So, and especially, I find it's the Canada-US one is the big one. There are certain countries, I know that certain airports, I know Heathrow in London, there's a few others that are, it's under that global, what's the global trusted traveler or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's like a association. So Nexus is just one of these trusted traveler type programs. So a lot of times when you're going to certain airports, if it says you're a trusted traveler and it doesn't show you the Nexus symbol, Nexus may still be accepted anyways.
Yes.
So just make sure to show your card and they'll probably let you in.
Yes.
So it's just a matter of kind of getting the hang of it, and especially some of the bigger airports. Some of the smaller ones,
they don't have them all.
They don't have them, and they really don't care.
No.
But you know what? We've kind of learned it doesn't hurt to try. So the TSA is expanding which airlines and airports can use their PreCheck system. And I just wanted to make sure that I clarified it, because it kind of sounded like I was saying that as long as you have a Nexus card, you can go ahead and try. Some places will. However, it's usually based on the airlines and the airports. So if you've already booked your flight and registered that you have a Nexus card and or whatever the card number is that you have for that global entry system, the airline itself, if it's part of this program, will actually print the something about TSA PreCheck, or that you're authorized for PreCheck, right on your boarding pass. So that means whether it's on the printed one or even if it's on an email one as well. And that basically shows the customs officers who are in the security area that you already have the PreCheck, and it has nothing to do with your Nexus card. So I just want to make that clear. However, PreCheck has actually expanded, and they're now going to be able to accept this process at more than 200 U.S. airports. And as of this month, you can fly on all kinds of other airlines like British Airways and Porter Airlines and Scandinavian Airlines and other places through branches of Thomas Cook Airlines that will be able to allow this part of the Trusted Traveler program. So it actually totals the participating airlines up to 53. So just double check with either your travel agent, whoever's booking the flight for you, to see if that airline is actually have an ongoing agreement with the TSA PreCheck system, and that will allow you to use your Nexus or Global Entry card to make sure that the security line is faster than lightning. It's a good idea to having either, if you don't have a cell phone, I honestly, for security purposes, I never leave the hotel without my phone.
I know. What's your take on, I'm not familiar with this, but people also, before we actually had the ability to get data and stuff, they would buy a SIM card from where they were, and they would put it into a phone. First of all, you'd have to have an unlocked phone.
Or they would buy almost
a
like
burner,
cheap phones. Yeah.
Like a burner phone. Sorry.
Oh my God. It sounds so shady.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And then so do you just then you have a new number?
I think it was a money saving thing a while back that used to be cheaper than what your current cell phone provider could offer you in North America.
Okay.
But the prices have come down quite a bit, and because people are traveling more, and this is a global economy now, they do most cell phone providers, especially the North American ones, are trying to compete with a lot of the overseas ones, knowing that if everybody started going and buying other plans or other phones elsewhere, they wouldn't make any money. So they got smart and kind of brought their prices down, so they're a little bit more.
The offer's better.
The offer's much better,
Get
and they're
more data,
usually
more
flat
roaming.
rates per day.
Right.
And it's only if you use
$10,
it. So if you don't happen to turn your phone on for a day because you happen to be in Mexico and you're sitting on the beach for the day and you're not leaving the resort, you wouldn't be charged for that day. But if you did need to go off the resort, you're going on a full day excursion someplace or whatever, if you decide to turn your phone on and put the roaming on, you're only paying for that extra travel fee, which is, I don't know, $20, $25 for the day, but that's for the day.
Yes.
Right? So there's whole packages now where it's $7 to the US. I think it was, so it's $7 a day when you're going to the US, and it actually gives you the ability to use your current package. Is kind of how the way it works now.
Interesting.
Yeah, Rogers does that and TELUS does that. I know it for sure. So anyway, it's one of those things. I never leave home without my cell phone. I don't leave without a hotel without my cell phone.
Exactly.
Resort without the cell phone. Oh, one of the other last tips I have, because normally this is not a, we kind of learn as we go.
Absolutely.
So one of the other things that it's happened to us a few times, it has to do with ride sharing programs. So things like Uber and stuff are everywhere, including other countries. And we have another, especially down in the States and the cities. And we have on a number of occasions, and it's happened to us a few times, where the vehicle that showed up is not the vehicle that was registered. So we were expecting a white Corolla as an example, right? A different car shows up.
Yes.
We've also done it where we've actually hired an actual car and driver, like for an airport car service. Again, it's supposed to be a town car or supposed to be a certain color, certain style. A different one shows up. The guy laughs when he shows up and he just says, yeah, we get that all the time. We don't even have any white cars in our fleet, so I don't know why it says white, right? But I'm thinking, after a couple of weeks when you're touring around in different cities and this keeps happening, we're at the point now that Norm said, like, we have been lucky, but what happens if some guy just pulled up and we hopped in? Because we weren't, right? Because it could be not a licensed taxi or anything else. It's just a vehicle that pulled up that kind of looked like what we were expecting. And, one of them has to do with one guy kind of admitted or kind of half admitted that he was driving for a friend of his, picking up a shift. So you really have to worry about some of those ride sharing things. And especially people are starting to use them instead of regular taxis.
Yes.
To go places when they're traveling. And you'll notice that at hotels, they're never going to call an Uber for you.
No, they won't. And I mean, but I have to say you're so correct. I'm always looking for the color of the car and what kind of car and what the person is. And until they say, oh, Stacy, are you Stacy?
Yes.
I won't get in.
No. And you have to be that concerned about it. Yeah. But there was a couple of times, and not to mention we've had a few drivers that didn't, even though they had a GPS, either GPS wasn't working right, they didn't know where they were going. They seemed to be taking a long way around. And I know that last time we were in New York, he was getting nervous. Luckily, I know my way around Manhattan enough that I can say we're going in the general direction. I'm keeping an eye on things. I keep things on my phone. Oh, that was one of the things. I was talking to my hairdresser this morning. It's such a girl thing, but I was talking about, we were taping some of these soap topics today, and I said most people don't realize that on your phone, especially if you have a smartphone, you don't need to have your roaming on or anything else to access your map, as in your location services of where you are. So I found that out by accident once, because that was before all these new travel plans happened that all cell phones have now. Before then, you had basically had to pay so much per day or so
Yeah.
much per hour or whatever else added onto your package, and it was expensive. So we always kept Wi-Fi on only while we were at the hotel.
Yes.
And then as soon as we left the hotel, we would either stop and I would check email or text somebody or check in at home or do anything when we went to a place that had Wi-Fi, restaurant,
Absolutely.
cafe, or whatever. But in between, if you're trying to get from one place to another, especially you're on foot, having access to a map is a little easier. And it sounds interesting enough, but I find you look less like a tourist looking at your phone on a sidewalk than you do when you're looking on the big fold-out map.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
Because everyone's looking at their phone anyways.
Everybody, yeah. These days.
So one of the cool things is that you can, so as long as you have, you press the little button on your map thing that locates where you are, kind of pinpoints where you are now. And as you're walking, it will actually track and it'll keep moving where you are. So you can at least see where your cross streets are.
Right.
So that's been a really big help for us when we're traveling, especially for security wise. I always need to know where I am relative to where I'm going, relative
Absolutely.
to where my hotel is. So I can kind of keep an eye on, okay, so I don't get lost, right?
Absolutely.
But you do not need to have your cell phone plan or your travel plan just to access that little map feature on your smartphone. I know it works on my iPhone, so if it doesn't work on any other device, please let me know. But it's worked for me on my iPhone all the way through our travels, which has been handy.
Excellent. I'm going to have to look into that because I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
See, things
Now
you
know.
learn.
You gotta turn it off.
Things you learn. Oh, and something else that I've always thought about too is that if you're even a seasoned traveler, is grab a card from the hotel that you're
Yes.
staying at.
Thank you.
And also grab cards.
Especially if language is an issue, you can
Yes.
show a business card for the hotel.
Yes. Because you don't know what you're going to be doing all day and you might be tired. You might have been partaking in wine tastings and stuff all day. And like, where am I staying? It's like,
And or how do I get there? And
Well-
what's the address? Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Right? And
There's
not to
7 of the
mention-
same Sheratons or the 7 of the same Hiltons or Best
It-
Westerns, right? Like there are.
Yes, and you don't want to get taken to the wrong place.
Right.
And not to mention if is a language barrier, you may be pronouncing things incorrectly, or if it's a really big city. So we had a business card. We were in Shanghai, and we
I
decided
was
to go
just gonna
normally on our own.
Yeah.
And we were warned that even the taxi drivers are usually, beyond just not understanding English.
Just basically you have to go.
Even then, it was
No clue.
no clue.
Oh, wow.
So we managed to, with the help of somebody, we got smart. We actually went to another hotel that was down the street because we were going to a different hotel. We were at a restaurant. We went to the hotel we figured had, usually, most hotels will, have employees that do speak English.
Yes,
Or at least have
always,
right?
always,
Hotels,
always. People-
hotels
yeah.
do.
Huge thing, right? And I know everybody thinks, oh, I can't go there. I don't know the language. Oh my goodness. You can go to any country, city, place in this world, and you will be able to communicate some way.
Correct. And usually hotels are your best bet. So even when we were in Spain on our last trip, we were in a small town that's not used to tourists. We, aside from one waiter in one of the restaurants who had traveled outside of Spain a little bit, and he was very excited because he got to practice his English on us, which was great. That one night, the lady who worked the hotel front desk was the only other person that we ran into that spoke any English whatsoever, to the point where we would say something in broken Spanish and they would just answer in Spanish like we understood them.
Yeah, like, whoa, time out.
I mean, yeah, I'm not as fluent or semi-fluent as I used to be, but there's a lot of places, and that's one of our go-tos now, is that if you're not sure, you need to ask either directions, even if it's not your hotel. If you need to ask directions, if you are lost, if you need help with something, going to the closest hotel is probably going to be your safest bet, because there will be there people who you can talk to, who will understand you and can actually point you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, there's usually taxis waiting at every hotel.
Absolutely.
I know.
It's like going to Canadian Tire looking for something. What do? Do you wander for 2 hours trying to find it? Or do you ask someone? I just ask people.
Yeah, and we've done that many times,
You
where
know.
especially there's some cities that taxis are not, there's not a lot of them, and there's not a lot of public transportation options, and we know that we have quite a ways to get to where we need to go. So we will go to the closest hotel and we walk right to the front, just like every other guest in
Absolutely.
that hotel, and we take their
And-
taxi and good to go.
Yes. And they're always good. They're always welcoming. Because tourism is their industry, right?
Hospitality is their thing.
Exactly.
One other thing I thought would be interesting to talk about is what happens if you lose your ID before a flight. Sometimes just in travel, whether it was stolen or something like that, you're panicked that your entire vacation could be ruined. And surprisingly, it might be a little easier than you think. So a couple little tips I always tell people: make sure you have additional forms of identification with you. As much as you may be tempted to leave your wallet, most of your wallet at home, and just travel with your passport, having any other kind of identification, even if it's a credit card that's in your name, obviously, business cards, even if prescription for medication that has your name and address on it, something else that's with you to show who you are, where you live. That will actually help to prove your identity, and they will basically allow you to continue on your journey with a note that you don't have ID, but they basically authorize your identity. It is going to cause a lot of delays in your process in your travel, whereas you'll constantly being asked to stop and discuss your situation again and have them do a double check and which airline did you choose or you talk through. So just make sure to have all that kind of thing ahead of time. The other thing is that I have photographs of my passport stored in a remote area digitally, that I can always download or access from wherever I am if something ever happened to my passport. It has, so you can actually see the inside opened up page that has my photo and all of the numbers, and it has the expiry dates and issue dates and all the other information that any kind of a customs officer or passport control is going to need. So by having that remotely, or you can even leave photocopies with a family member someplace, that if you ever needed it, they can actually either send it by fax or by taking a photograph and emailing it to you. But there's many ways you can do that. But just having a second copy of your passport someplace is actually a really good safeguard, especially if you have to deal with embassies. But regardless of the situation, make sure that you always remain calm and courteous. Just keep in mind that all these people are basically doing their job. They are asking for identification and making sure you are who you say you are, that you're traveling where you're supposed to be going, and that you are not there to harm anyone else. So just keep that in mind, and just think that they're also doing that to make sure that nobody who's not supposed to be traveling is doing so as well. So they're there for your safety as well as mine. So just make sure to think ahead of any kind of possibilities and prepare yourself accordingly. One last thing I thought was interesting. This TSA is now maintaining a list of unruly and disruptive passengers. So it's something that you can't access. It's not like it's a no flight list. This is a list of people who have done things like swat a hand away from a security officer during a pat down, or because they would sometimes even misunderstand that as assault, so it's logged. Anyone who's been loitering suspiciously near a checkpoint, or any kind of activity that's kind of poses suspicion or delays the completion of the screening process. They are just making sure that they kind of have a running list of people and experiences logged, so that they have something to fall back on just to keep track and make sure this is not a constant behavior. You don't get blacklisted or anything like that, but keep in mind, the Chinese have been doing this now since 2016, especially when it comes to airlines. And some of the people who have been on those lists in China have been denied service from not just airlines, but hotels and other tourist attractions. So in other words, again, not just be calm and courteous, but be on your best behavior, because somebody may not interpret something that you're doing or saying in the correct way. And these lists can just snowball into something and cause not just delays, but misunderstandings, and anything like those just add more heartache to your lovely traveling process that you're planning to do for a relaxing getaway. So better to be safe than sorry.
And it's funny you brought up security bans and travel bans and stuff like that. It's you can snip this out if this is not the right show, but I just went on a familiarization trip with Air Transat, and we ended up being in Jamaica. and just right prime into the time of where the travel ban was for Montego Bay. And every property that we went to, we had a presentation, and in every single one, they discussed the ban. They discussed that how safe you are as a traveler, why the ban is in place. And then they listed all of the other Caribbean islands that have the same ban in effect, but we just don't know about it. And it's just basically why they did what they did was it's so that they have the rule of order, so the government can come in and actually kibosh any kind of activity that would cause or promote a safety risk for any travelers, because their economy is based on travel, like tourism.
Oh, of course.
And so they were very, very adamant. They said, we are safe. You are safe.
Well, this is a good segue into hotel security. I am going to be going through a time at some point. Usually once a year, we do tend to do a last minute sun holiday someplace. I admit that I have been nervous about going back to Mexico.
Oh.
Certain places more than others.
Mhm.
If I'm going to fly to the southern part, I maybe don't mind going to the Mayan Riviera area. Can't see myself hanging out in Playa del Carmen or Cancun for a little while. Unfortunately, because I'm a bit of a news junkie, I do tend to, I read every little article. I see all the stories. I hear some of the horror stories. I also know that some of them sometimes exaggerated. I also know that sometimes things are probably whitewashed. I don't like using that term, but hidden a little bit, made a little nicer. So it's not as bad because, again, tourism is so important to them. So I don't know. I can't be the only person. I've seen a lot of people online. I've been trying to calm people down.
Mm-hmm. You're not the only one. And it's funny because, I mean, I can say I know a couple that actually went through some stuff down in the Dominican. And again, you have to be careful. You have to be aware of the fact that just because you're going on a vacation doesn't mean you are
in a bubble
and immortal. You are as at risk of any kind of injury or harm or violence as you are when you're in your normal city or going to Toronto or going to New York or Vancouver. Exactly the same.
I think it has to do with
going on vacation
and partly being exposed to larger cities where a lot of strangers are, and where sometimes, yes, there's more crime and there's more accidents and there's more things that happen. So if you I know that people I've talked to, either who are new to traveling or live in a small town and they're not even used to, like, going to downtown Toronto freaks them out.
Oh,
right? So yes, going into a big city in another country is also going to make you panic a little bit. And yes, there are things that happen to, and I've heard some horror stories from friends who have traveled to particular places in the South that I think might be just unique to that area, because yes, there's some gangs and there's some other things that might be a little bit more exaggerated in certain areas of the country. But I said, we went to Nicaragua on a day trip. Like, we just decided to go. And yes, there was a whole lot of people wearing camouflage and, and rifles and everything else at borders and securities.
Absolutely.
And so the first time we went through one of those checkpoints and they were asking to see our passports, we did have a guide with us. So as much as I was nervous at the beginning, because we were there with a guide, he calmed us down. Like, he goes, everybody has to do this. So we basically show our passports so they can just sort of verify who's coming in and out, sent us on our way, and then we had an amazing time for the day. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that I think spreads around the internet a little bit that may get people a little bit more worried than they need to be. I mean, it's considering the fact that I'm even nervous about it. I guess the other thing is, I think it has to do with, there's a lot of people who travel and never leave the resort.
Very much so. And there are people who leave the resort without being cautious. And that's one of my big points is that, okay, if you're solo traveling, you are not going to, okay, you may, and I'm not going to say you shouldn't, but you may want to be cautious about going out at night on the street, going to a local bar, any country. Yes. I mean, well, not any country, but I mean any island or anything where you don't have the same kind of legality or laws that we do here in Canada.
Well, and I was also, I was just reading some article about tourists in a particular country, and one of the concluding things in the article was, so if you're going to a strange country that's not used to a lot of tourists, like, I know you're really proud of your alma mater, don't wear your university sweatshirt wandering around if you're concerned and you want to blend in. So unfortunately, again, anyone who is going to target tourists, they're going to look for people who scream tourist. So that would be the Hawaiian shirt, the plaid shorts, the camera around your neck.
Camo.
Yeah. There are so many things that kind of like scream like, hello, I don't know where I'm going.
From Canada, the big Canada flag.
Big Canada flag. As much as you think that everyone loves Canada, you still like scream tourist. And so people will watch and follow you. Or you'll get, I laugh, I forget, was it in Barcelona? There was one guy who was going around in the cafes just shining people's shoes. He would start on your shoes while you're talking to somebody, while you're seated, expecting that you're going to pay him after. I had sandals on one time and he started, someone touching my feet freaked me out.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that like someone was almost crawling under the table and I didn't know it until he started like basically rubbing my feet with his dirty rag. So if he would have asked me, it would have been polite or something, but just to show you how I wasn't paying attention, and it was in a very high tourist area as well. So there are going to be a couple little things I'm always noticing that because I watch the news, not as much. I don't tend to go to the very high touristy things anyways, but you do want to go and see them. So standing in lines with larger groups right now, my big motto is anything can happen at any time, anywhere, anyways.
Exactly.
So if you were going to live your life thinking that the next 10 minutes something could happen, I feel like you're missing out on so many other things that you could be experiencing because you're fearful of the maybe, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, not so long ago, I saw a couple posts, and I mean, we all see posts about Mexico, and I know you were talking about Mexico, and yeah, you have to be a heightened awareness when you're in Mexico. But my remark was, you know what, you have to be aware of what's going on. I mean, I remember getting hit in a parking lot standing while someone reversed into me when I was in Athens. So the reality is anything can happen anywhere, anyways, right? Exactly. So it's sort of like you have to be cautious.
Since we're talking about hotels and resorts, I wanted to talk a little bit about just general hotel security. There have been instances in the States as well as in resorts or overseas hotels where guests may have been either involved or witness to different kinds and levels of violence. Hotels have been around for centuries in various formats. There's always people doing weird things in hotel rooms. So I'm just asking that you don't always know what's going on, and it's kind of difficult for people to sort of keep track of things. It's not the same as those who are keeping an eye on in airport security. Hotel security has its own jobs, but airline staff and airport staff are actually trained of what to watch out for. And because of any recent violence that you've seen or heard on the news that have happened in other cities and countries, a lot of hotel chains are actually implementing mandatory training programs for front desk staff, for the janitorial staff, for basically all of their workers of things to look out for and to keep an eye on, and what determines somebody to be suspicious, what next steps should be taken, because their priority is to ensure that you are safe. So what I always tell people is make sure you know your exits. There is a sign in the back of your hotel room door for a reason. So by taking a quick glance when you shut the door of just where that circle or X is, kind of keeps things in the back of your mind. Surprisingly how quickly you'll remember that. Knowing a little bit of first aid, if there was ever any kind of a situation like a fire or anything else, that you'd be able to help not just maybe a family member, someone who's traveling with you, but maybe somebody else that's traveling nearby, like another guest. And just keeping an eye out. As Stacy said, it's something that you think you know that you're going to be safe in a certain place, but just like you could be in an accident in your own hometown, those same kind of things happen when you're out traveling as well. So just by being aware of your surroundings and taking precautions as you need to, there's no excuse and no need to be really fearful of traveling anywhere, as long as you go there with the right frame of mind and don't be overly suspicious, and just keeping an eye on things just like you normally would do at home. So in closing, we could probably go for another hour on this topic, because security is always something that's going to be discussed more and more as our media and social media trade and share stories of explosions and terrible things that happen all over this world. And unfortunately, because this news is more prevalent and being to be shared on an ongoing basis, it sometimes tends to scare people away from traveling to particular cities or doing things out of the norm or going off-site on a resort. And that's just going to discourage people from traveling and visiting and learning about other cultures, which is something that we here at Flying for Flavor never advocate. So I think it's a matter of just sort of learning how you go. So make sure to check out the show notes. We're going to have those list again about the what to do at the security area of the airport to make things go smoother for you. I have some links on there as well of things that articles that we were kind of referencing as we're going, talking about those new airlines that are involved with the TSA PreCheck program, as well as I have a link directly to the Nexus application through the Customs and Border Patrol so that you can go ahead and get that application started, because it's really easy to do. It will help your travel going much more smoothly, and any delays through security, knowing that you're one of those trusted travelers. And if you're not in one of the major centers, meaning Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, here in Sudbury, I had no problem. I do everything online. And then when they let me know that my application has been accepted, I basically choose a date and time and a location of where I'd like to have that interview. I set the time and date myself. It could be in Toronto or Ottawa or Montreal, especially if you're going to be traveling to those cities this summer anyhow. Go and do the interview. It seriously takes 10-15 minutes. The cost is not very much. I want to say, don't quote me on this, $75-$80. But it's basically like a 5-year turnaround, just like a passport. So it's something that it'll be peace of mind, one extra part of identification to hang on to you in your wallet as well. So if you have any questions or things about this topic that you'd like to share with us, you can always email us at flavor@stephaniepichet.ca. Share your thoughts or any articles or notes that you hear about, especially with that shrink wrapping the luggage thing. Feel free to share it on our Facebook page. Just look for us under Flying for Flavor. And if you're interested in anything on that Graze the Bench event or other things that are going on, you can always follow me on my Facebook page as well as my Instagram page, where I share any wineries that I go to, wine recommendations, any restaurants that I'm visiting, and then hotels and resorts as always. So please subscribe and rate us on any of the podcast apps that you're listening to us on, just so that we can keep track of who's listening. We can say hello, and maybe we can come to a city near you. And if you don't have one of those podcast apps and you just want to listen to us on your desktop, you can always find us at flyingforflavor.ca. Have a safe and sunny week.